mandatory process for taking military action that was bound to lead to their own deaths.
But who's the target now of Islamist suicide bombing?
Well, it depends which ones you mean.
Hamas, Islamic Jihad?
No, but it depends which operation you mean. A suicide bombing of a group of Israeli... A suicide bombing of a group of Israeli soldiers in illegal occupation of Palestinian lands is an entirely legitimate military act. A suicide bombing of a group of Israeli settlers illegally occupying Palestinian land is an entirely justifiable military action. A suicide bombing of a falafel stall in Tel Aviv is not. A suicide bombing of a nightclub in Haifa is not. So there's your answer.
All right, so let's move on from there, because clearly we're going to disagree. And by the way, Hamas is entirely allied with the global jihad. Mahmoud al-Zahar and the others regularly state that they're looking to impose an Islamic regime.
You are a political broadcast on behalf of the Zionist movement. What are you, by the way? I didn't even know that you were coming here. You've actually got this interview under false pretenses.
Liar. I did not.
I think that we should conclude this interview now. I told you at the beginning, before we started, I don't speak to the Israeli media.
I'm not the Israeli media.
Well, you might as well be. And I've no intention of talking to either of you any further. So good afternoon, gentlemen. Please leave.
It continues.
Call the police.
You can call the police.
Okay.
I think I'm going to do exactly that before you leave.
Excuse me?
You can leave that here. Okay? You can leave that here.
Well, no.
Who are you?
So we're listening to the audio of me with British Parliament. By the way, when he said you can leave that here, he's actually talking about my laptop. He's actually talking about the audio file of the interview that we just conducted with George Galloway. And all because I called Hamas a terrorist organization, and he didn't like that too much. He's about to call the police on us. And he does call the police on us. That is coming up in just a minute. And I want to tell you that I fully coordinated this interview with George Galloway's assistant. His name is Kevin Ovenden. I sent him several requests with exactly who I am from WorldNet Daily, and then I'm going with Rusty Humphries from Talk Radio Network, and that we were doing a radio debate, not an interview. So there he is, George Galloway, about to kick me out of his office and then call the police because I called Hamas a terrorist organization. We're going to hear that, the entire audio of me with the police in British Parliament being kicked out. That's coming up on Aaron Klein Investigative Radio on 77 WABC. We'll be right back. George Galloway is about to call the police, and the whole thing, I actually had my radio equipment with me from start to finish, so I recorded everything, and I was there with Rusty Humphries, good friend of mine, and you're going to hear him in just a bit coming up. He's a talk show host. So let's continue with my audio, just as we're about to be deployed by the Parliamentary Police in London.
Yes.
I did not.
I think that we should conclude this interview now. I told you at the beginning, before we started, I don't speak to the Israeli media.
I'm not the Israeli media.
Well, you might as well be. And I've no intention of talking to either of you any further. So good afternoon, gentlemen. Please leave before I call the police.
You can call the police.
Okay.
I think I'm going to do exactly that before you leave.
Excuse me?
You can leave that here. Okay? You can leave that here.
Well, no.
Who are you? Who are you, exactly?
I told you exactly who I was.
And who do you
do
work
a Google
for?
News search. I don't work for any Israeli media.
Who do you work for?
WorldNet Daily, which is an American media company.
You told us you
And
were...
you told
Talk
me
Radio, no, Talk Radio Network.
And who are you? This interview...
Talk Radio
Well,
Network.
if there's a confusion, it's because of your duplicity. This was not an interview with anyone operating out of Israel. I don't talk to journalists in Israel.
I don't come...
And you're not a journalist. You're a political partisan for Zionism. Now, please leave my office.
I have to show you that.
Sure.
We're going out now. We're on the elevator.
This is so you can't get a picture with him.
On the elevator.
What it means is that your
On the
face
ground
is
floor.
going to be recognised and reported to the Sergeant at Arms officers.
Okay, what did I mean?
And what it means is...
What did I do?
What it means is because the two of you got in here under false pretences, that you won't be setting foot in the Palace of Westminster again.
Well, hold on a second. What
There were no false
what
pretenses.
pretenses did I say? I don't understand. Again, what was the false pretense?
Wait to the other side of here, please.
Now the police are showing
Wait.
up.
Thank you.
Before you two go,
Yes.
if these two come in again, They came in here under false pretenses.
What false
There are no
pretenses?
false pretenses.
Yes, you did. You're not the people you said you were.
What are you talking about?
You're not from the organisation you said you were.
I most certainly
Talk
am.
Radio Network.
Please
I
leave.
most certainly am.
Hang a minute. Excuse me. Can we just find out what's going on before we send them off?
If you stop talking, I'll explain to the officer. They were let in here under those circumstances. They were connected with the national radio network.
Which I am. I'm on 265 radio stations across
In
America.
the United States.
Correct.
We're all in the United States. Can we just have one person talking? Because I can't hear both.
They're not connected with that outfit.
Lying.
Instead of conducting an interview, they started to conduct haram with a member here.
A haram.
We don't regard
A
it as
haram, because I
security
had talked about Hamas.
There's been an absolute. We're going to be on to both the organisations that they claim to represent because they've found their way into the portcullis house.
Found our way. You let us in, and you knew who we were.
Okay.
Now we can
Okay,
say
now
our
the
part,
police.
that's
Yes,
Wait, the
absolutely
police
not
are going to
true.
show up and
I have my
interrogate us.
Absolutely not true. But,
Can you just
all
take
right,
a seat
we'll just
over
leave.
there with us for a second?
Can we just leave?
No, don't just take a seat over there with us for a second.
All right.
We want to get some-
He got upset because we asked about.
We're going to get
He
some
asked the
notes.
wrong
Someone's gonna
question,
come over
and he got really pissed off. That's what happened.
here. Someone's going to come over and have a chat with you.
Okay, now the police are coming.
We got him upset with the questions.
a version of events, and we're just following that up. Okay. One of our colleagues is going to come over and speak to you. Okay.
Almost
Not only
over.
did he know that I told him like many times, by the way, that I'm in Israel.
Have you specifically come over here for this interview? Or
No.
Now we're being interrogated.
Other things. This was part of it. I just got back from Afghanistan. I came over with the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe as his personal guest. And I'm investigating the war on terror around the world.
Now listen to this,
Galloway
listen to
was
this.
one of the world's most outspoken critics. And that's why I wanted to talk to him and ask him about it. But to say that we're not journalists, or to say that we were here under false pretenses,
It's absolutely
is
not true.
absolutely untrue.
So perhaps you should have shown some identification.
They never asked.
Well, perhaps in hindsight,
Now listen carefully.
the sort of thing you'll be doing in the future now. And then perhaps also in hindsight you might want to ask what sort of things you want to ask.
No, I
And
literally,
then,
we told them
if
exactly.
you're not going to ask things that he doesn't want to answer, he doesn't give you any.
I made
interview in
very
the first
clear
place.
what we were going to talk about, and we gave our names, our identification.
Well, obviously, the young man I've spoken to, his version is that after a few minutes, the question wasn't the sort of thing perhaps they were expecting.
But that isn't illegal, and that's the way reporters operate.
I'm not disagreeing with you, all right? But I know for a fact that somebody
Listen.
like Mr. Galloway, if he doesn't think the interview is going to be to his advantage, probably, is not going to want to speak to him. Right.
If he doesn't think that the interview is going to be to his advantage, he's not going to want to speak to us. That's what the police actually tell us. They admit that that's why we're being interrogated. Anyway, so the fiasco actually didn't end there. First, we get out of the Parliament building after being interrogated. And by the way, we're told that our names, me and Rusty Humphries, we're going to be on a list of a watch list, so that should we ever try to enter the British Parliament again, they're going to go put us through extra security and interrogation, as if we're the security threats, not Elma Hajiron, which is running around the UK calling for the death to the Queen and the downfall of the UK government. Yeah, it's not the terrorists supporting Islamists that we heard in the clips just a few minutes ago who were talking about their support for Osama bin Laden. It's me for asking George Galloway whether Hamas is a terrorist organization. How crazy is that? But anyway, it didn't end there, as I said. We get out of the British Parliament, and I realized that I left my laptop in George Galloway's office. I had my radio equipment with me, but not my laptop. So I call up his office, which, believe me, they did not exactly want to hear from me, and a female assistant answers the phone. She's somebody who witnessed the entire ordeal. And I tell her, excuse me, but I'm sorry to have to say this, but I left my laptop in your office. Could I come and get it back? And she tells me, I don't think so, and then abruptly ends the phone call. Well, I don't know what to do because I don't want George Galloway having my laptop. Actually, George Galloway stole my laptop. He stole it. He's not allowed to have it. So I go back to the British Parliament where I'm not allowed in anymore. I'm on a watch list. So outside, they come to me outside, and I say that I want to file a complaint, a police complaint against George Galloway because he stole my laptop. So the guard for the British Parliament calls up to Galloway's office, and we wait 2 minutes, and then suddenly Galloway's assistant, the guy who escorted us out, his name's Kevin, comes down, brings the computer, puts it down right next to me, silently turns around, turns his back to us, and walks away. So I got out with my laptop, finally, eventually, but the whole ordeal really teaches us something about the UK, doesn't it? And also in part about the US.